Nutrition and digestion. Nutrition is obviously of extreme importance for our happiness, our health, and our well-being. Thus, it's worth understanding at least a little bit about it, so the basics will be presented here, as well as digestion. So for this section, we'll be looking at the sort of gross morphology involved in the digestive system, mostly in humans, but in some other organisms as well. So nutrition, digestion together, what we're talking about is consuming foods to get energy. Energy, in a physical chemical sense, is the amount of energy needed to raise 1 gram of water by 1 degree Celsius. Now, we often think of ourselves as eating, for a standard male in the US, about a 2,000 calorie diet and between 15 and 1,800 calories per day in the diet for a typical woman in the US. Now, we say calories, but really what we mean are kilocalories. So each one of those calories that we consume, that we think about, is really 1,000 calories. So we have 1,000, 2,000 calories. So you multiply those two numbers, and it's a very large number. And I guess it would make us, at least in the United States, feel self-conscious about it. So we refer to kilocalories instead. But again, it sounds better to say calorie, so colloquially, that's what we call it. Not the most essential part of this lesson, but I figured it was something worth knowing. The energy that we get obviously comes from our foods, and within the things that we eat, we need all 3 of those major macromolecule food groups that you talked about and learned about in Bio 101. So you need lipids, you need carbohydrates, and you need proteins. As you can see, you get a different amount of nutrition. You get a different number of calories per gram for each one of these food substances. So you get more than twice the amount of calories from lipids, from fats and phospholipids, as you do from carbohydrates, things like starches and sugars, or from proteins. Which is why lipids are both very important in certain climates, and also something in a fairly sedentary lifestyle in the United States, something that we have to be careful about. But the important thing to notice is that we need all of those. It is not safe or healthy to cut an entire one of these food groups out of your diet completely. So things like the Atkins diet, where you stop eating carbs, is really only something that you can do for a limited time, because you need those starches, you need that glycogen, you need cellulose in order to have a happy, healthy, functioning body. And the same thing with lipids. We need to moderate the amount of lipids that we eat. We need to moderate the number of carbohydrates that we eat, but we can't cut them out completely. So lipids are, again, an essential nutrient, and this is why some diets are dangerous, why people actually get sick or die from the diets that they try. We need lipids because phospholipids are a component of our cell membranes, and our cells will not form properly, they will not go through mitosis properly if we don't give them the building blocks that they need. So we need to eat lipids to get the phospholipids. We need cholesterol. Only about 20% of the cholesterol is produced by our bodies, so we need to consume it. It's going to help us, again, to build cell membranes. Cholesterol is also a component of the cell membrane. To have sex hormones, if you want to be a fully functional male or female, you need to have that cholesterol there, and you need it to produce bile. So in other words, you need to eat fats in order to be able to digest fats. Now, we can make some of the fatty acids, but of all of them, we make just a small percentage. And so the ones that we are not capable of making are the essential fatty acids, and we have to consume those. And animals, just like humans, can store energy as fat. So if you consume more calories or kilocalories than your body needs, you will save them. Essentially, it's putting those calories in the bank for a later day. Now, again, in the United States, where we have ready access to food virtually all of the time, Sometimes we don't really need this reservoir of calories, and so it tends to just accumulate in unpleasant areas on the body. But that's an adaptation, and it's a good one to have in any area where food is not so readily abundant as it is here in the States. Carbohydrates, this is predominantly your sugars and starches, a major source of energy, probably the dominant one in nearly every culture's diets. Glycogen is what our body turns this sugar or starch into, and it's used for short-term energy storage. Our bodies will have these glycogen reserves within our muscles, as well as storing some in the liver. And that is what, when an expert athlete, like a marathon runner, is preparing for a long race, they will carb load or carb fix. They'll consume a large number of calories from starches in the day or two before the race to build up those stores so that they have them accessible in their muscles while they're running. Cellulose is the most abundant form of carbohydrate. Cellulose is what makes woody plants woody and stringy vegetables stringy. It's something, though, that is extraordinarily difficult to digest, and many animals cannot digest cellulose, and the few that cannot do it on their own. They really rely on a symbiosis with bacteria to be able to get any nutrition out of cellulose. But again, it doesn't mean that we should not consume it. It just means that we might not necessarily get the same level of nutrients from it. Now, amino acids, these are going to come predominantly from proteins. So protein is an important component to be on the lookout for, particularly if you're a vegetarian or vegan. But amino acids are used to synthesize new proteins. So if we're going to make new muscle, we need to have amino acids available there. Amino acids are also used for enzymes. So pretty much every body function that's going to take place is going to rely on enzymes, thus amino acids, so you have to have these in your diet. Receptors on cell membranes, hemoglobin, hair and nails, you name it, antibodies to fight infections. We need amino acids in our bodies, so we have to have protein of some variety, whether it's coming from meat or somewhere else, in our diets. Proteins or amino acids can also serve as short-term energy. So if someone has gone through all of those lovely reservoirs of fat that they have in their bodies will actually turn to amino acids. They will start to consume their own muscle mass when they face starvation, to turn that muscle into calories that the heart can keep beating and the brain can keep functioning and life can continue, which is why victims of starvation become so grossly emaciated. Now, there are 20 amino acids, but we can only make about 11 of them. And so the other ones, again, have to come from our diet. And these are the essential amino acids, the ones that our bodies cannot make. So if you are a meat eater, pretty much all meats will contain all 11 of the essential amino acids. But if you are a vegetarian or vegan, then you have to combine the different food groups within things like legumes and corn to make sure that you're getting a complete balance of all of the essential amino acids. And if you don't get the proper amounts of protein, you can suffer protein deficiency diseases, something like kwashiorkor. So sometimes if you see in a magazine or a newspaper these children who are starving, but their bellies look all distended, so they look kind of fat. But if you look at their arms and legs, they're extraordinarily skinny. This is not fat. This is not a buildup of fat reserves from excess calories. This is actually fluid buildup because the capillaries don't function properly. When the capillaries don't have cells that are constructed appropriately and don't have the enzymes that they need, they will begin to leak and fluid will begin to build up in the abdomen. And so this distended belly is a symptom of kwashiorkor from protein deficiency. Same thing with minerals. Our bodies cannot make minerals, and so we have to eat them. And if you have deficiencies of key minerals in your diet, you will have a predictable set of symptoms. So two of these are rickets and goiters. So rickets comes from a deficiency in calcium. And you might say, well, even in underprivileged areas, sometimes they will have access to milk and calcium, but their bodies cannot absorb the calcium without a proper amount of vitamin D. So if you notice milk, if you purchase it within the US, it's all fortified with vitamin D that provides the vitamin D to the body so that the body can uptake the necessary calcium. And if you are deficient in one or both of these, rickets will form. You can see the abnormalities in the structure of the legs, the extremely bowed legs or inturned legs. And then similarly, if you have an iodine deficiency, you can get these goiters, which are these swollen masses around the glands. And that's why most salt that is purchased within the States is supplemented with iodine. So if you go and buy like Morton salt, it's iodinized. It has the iodine added so that we get that in our diets and don't suffer from a goiter. Vitamins work the same way. They're required for growth. We need them for cells to function properly, as well as for our bodies to develop properly, so especially in children and adolescents. Humans have to digest most of the minerals. We do not make very many on our own. Some of them are water soluble, so all of the C minerals, all of the B minerals. So you can't overdose those, as Sheldon had said in A Big Bang Theory. The bottles of vitamins that Penny was getting are just a recipe for very expensive urine. And he was correct, because if you take more than your body can handle, you will just excrete them. Most of the B complex vitamins, including B12, only come from animal products. And so while Penny was being perhaps a little silly about it in Big Bang Theory, it is true that vegans have to take vitamin supplements because they're not consuming the eggs or the milk or the cheese that will have the B vitamins that they would need from the foods that they're eating. But some vitamins, vitamins D, E, A, and K, are fat soluble, and those will actually build up in your bodies, and you can overdose on those. Those are very dangerous to take as individual vitamin supplements. If you take one multivitamin pill, that's not going to lead you to overdose if you take them in correct dosages, but if you decide to get individual bottles, you do have to be careful with those four, because again, they will build up in your body. And as with the minerals, vitamins work in combination. So a deficiency in one can lead to a lack of ability for your body to absorb others. And C and E are examples of two that work together. They're both antioxidants, and they will bind with free radicals that are in the body. So excess ions that are floating around in the body will be bonded to the C and the E and removed from the body. And it is thought that this may limit the effects of essentially buildup of excess ions, and possibly that could be why these seem to be correlated right now with reduces in the risk of cancer. So consuming antioxidants and having orange juice that's been fortified with extra vitamin E to supplement the vitamin C is supposed to be a good thing. Right now, there's no evidence of it directly that it's causal, but the correlation is fairly strong. And as with the minerals, vitamins can lead to a series of very predictable results if you have a deficiency in one of them. So an absence of niacin in the diet can lead to pellagra, and so you see sort of the almost leper-looking skin on the hands of that man. Beriberi results from thiamine. Bones and muscle do not form properly, so you have a lot of difficulty with mobility. Scurvy, which is the vitamin C deficiency, leads to swelling of joints. Hematomas in joints, so the blood vessels become leaky and essentially you bleed into your joints and you get bleeding gums. This is why the kind of stereotyped pirate, would have these nasty teeth, because a lot of pirates back in the good old days would suffer from scurvy. It was the British initially who discovered what was causing scurvy and realized that vitamin C was necessary to prevent it. That's why they're sometimes called limeys, because British sailors would have limes on board, and each sailor would have to take a wedge of lime and eat it, and it would prevent scurvy. And spina bifida is an extremely disabling disorder where your spinal cord doesn't form properly in the fetus if a mother has a folic acid deficiency. And that's why now pregnant women are suggested to take prenatal pills, and they always have high amounts of folic acid. Now, folic acid is another one, along with iron, where you can overdose on it and it can become dangerous to lethal, which is why I don't know if they still do it, but certainly back when I was pregnant around 20 years ago, um, vitamin, iron and folic acid and prenatal pills were kept behind the counter. You couldn't just purchase them because they didn't want people to accidentally overdose. So in the uploaded version, I'm going to place the answers for these. So make sure